Thanks, Steve, and thank you everyone for coming and joining us today. My name's Harvey. I'm from the Internet Child Abuse team. Steve just mentioned there was also on a podcast quite recently with him, which was some really interesting stuff. I'll try and keep it brief. I'm aware I'm the last person to speak to you today as part of this session, and I don't want to delay you getting away on time. If we run over a bit, blame James, not me. Um, so I am from the Internet Child Abuse team, and I'm the temporary detective sergeant there. They say temporary, but I've been here for a good 2 years now, almost, leading this team. And it's a personal passion of mine. I really enjoy this team, so you'll forgive me if I sort of ramble on about it because it's a big topic area and it's something that we could go on for hours about. Um, so let's see if I can get this to work. Yep. Oh, yeah, that's me. And what is the Internet Child Abuse Team? So the Internet Child Abuse Team, ICAT as we're known as, we deal with sort of like the child abuse imagery side of things and the online communications, online grooming side of things as well. We're typically dealing with adult offenders looking to engage with or exploit children online using, online means, things like that. Well, it's not exclusively what we deal with, but it's the vast majority of our work, and we're also dealing with offenders who are downloading, trading, and making indecent images of children as well. We're a semi-covert unit, and what that means is that we're not sort of within reach of the public to make reports to us, things although there are channels to reach to us. We're not sort of like a front-facing team. We use a lot of covert working systems in order to identify and trace people who are trading indecent images online and people who are engaging with children online. And then our role is as an investigations team, so not necessarily one of the safeguarding or the preventative side of things. We're here to go out there and deal with those nasty people online who are trying to get in touch with children or trying to exploit children for certain gains. So we take charge of proactive investigations and we work with our partner agencies in the NCA. You heard a little bit about COPS there from James, and I'll explain a little bit more about how we work with them in detail in a second, and also sort of like the ROCU as well, who we'll talk about shortly. Yeah, so ICAT, as it says there, Avon and Somerset Constabulary's response to the growing threat of online child exploitation and abuse. Every force will have their own team that are similar to us, and sometimes they're referred to as polit teams. If you hear somebody say about polit team, it's the old term really, and it's the paedophile online investigation teams. We call it the Internet Child Abuse team. It's a little bit more modern and it covers a wider area. You may have seen documentaries and things on Facebook about paedophile hunters, as they're called. Basically, we're sort of like the official version of that, and that's what we do in this unit. It's a great place to work, and I've had the privilege of being in charge of it for the last 2 years or so, and it's been great being here. So, as I said, they're one of the big partners, and where we get most of our referrals from is an organization called CEOP, the Child Exploitation and Online Protection Center. This is something that the NCA are sort of in control of, and it's the national center to deal with a national and international problem that takes in a lot of things from our national partners and also our international organizations out there, filters them out to home forces, sort of like Avon and Somerset Constabulary, or Devon and Cornwall, West Midlands, everything like that. So um, everything will go into CEOPS as a hub, as an intelligence report. So to say if somebody was uploading indecent images or somebody was perhaps trying to talk to children on a certain platform, that platform will refer it to the NCA and CEOP, or an international organization, perhaps a law enforcement body that's over in America refers it to CEOP, and they send it out to us once they've sort of identified roughly where in the country this person might be existing. And they work with a load of sectors in the UK and outside of the UK's to get those referrals into us. Yet, and notable partners there. You've got Interpol, Google, Microsoft, BAE, and even the Football Association. Anybody who has a safeguarding responsibility on a national and international level works with CEOP to get information out to police forces. And they're our primary source of information. And it looks something a bit like that. So we get referrals from Snapchat, Google, Microsoft, Facebook, X, formerly Twitter, and then also our partner organizations are quite capable of making referrals to CEOP as well about sort of children who are being exploited online, any of their concerns and intelligence. It filters into CEOP there, who decide which force is its best place to deal with, and then they send it out to us in the form of an intelligence report, which I can't show you here, but it comes out to us in a certain way that allows us to go and deal with that person and try and find them. CEOP is not just for businesses and other safeguarding agencies, it's also for anybody who is looking to make a report or report concern about a child that they know or about somebody who they think might be accessing this kind of material. It has a wonderful public-facing website that you can go and look at. If you're looking for any kind of resources on how to speak to children about online imagery, how to raise your concern, it's there, it's free to use, and it has this big make a report button at the bottom there, which is really helpful if you wanted to make a report about somebody who might be viewing, making, generating indecent images of children, or indeed trying to get involved with relationships online. If you work in a safeguarding position, you might well come across children who tell you about people that have got in contact with them recently. My new friend online, who they're not really specific about, but they talk about things I don't necessarily like, that kind of thing. You might be able to get some information out of them about who that person is online. And if you're not quite sure how to make a report directly to police, this is a great place to start, because these places will send it through to us. And as I mentioned earlier, another one of our working partners is the Regional Organised Crime Units, otherwise known as the ROCU. These are the people who do the sneaky online undercover sort of work. I think everybody knows that there isn't a place on the internet where the police don't have a presence these days, and these are the guys that we go to who send us a lot of work from that side of the world. People where they're deploying undercover officers online, things like that, to catch people out in the sort of darker sectors of the internet, and they send us a lot of work as well. They're not ordinarily contactable by members of the public, but they certainly generate a lot of referrals to us. And we've had some really good results out of them from referrals that they've made where they've been in contact with people online and sometimes posing as either children themselves or people with access to children, and sending the referrals on to us in the Internet Child Abuse team to then go out and deal with them in a proactive manner. Here's an example of some of the good work that we've been doing in ICAT. The man at the top there was Sydney Morris. He was a person who we were sent a referral for by the ROCU after they'd been in communication with him, and we managed to trace him to his HGV out in the middle of nowhere, which was quite difficult at the time, and managed to get a couple of cops breaking through his door and arresting him as he was trying to live stream child abuse. And then we got a good result out of that one. He went to prison for quite some time. And then to give you the kind of an example of the range of referrals that we get, this is at the bottom one there is a man by the name of Martin Parker, who was arrested because he lived in a property which overlooked a primary school, and caused us a great deal of concern because he was also talking about meeting up with children. And this is the kind of stuff we deal with, and this is an example of perhaps somebody who we didn't expect to get too much from. This was a result of a CEOPS referral, not a ROCU referral, which came through for just a single image. And it turned out when we went and arrested this chap, he was talking to over 182 victims and was filming people in public. Awful, awful person. And it took a lot of work to get him dealt with by our colleagues in the Northern office. But this is an example of the kind of thing that we do and the kind of proactive work that we take on. And it's my firm belief that by dealing with these kind of people at an early stage, whilst they're looking at images they haven't quite acted on, perhaps what they have in their minds, that we are preventing reports of perhaps real life abuse that's happened in the future. So don't ever think that perhaps if you've just seen something small, you don't think maybe it's not worth reporting, that kind of thing. Don't ever think that, because this is a great example of someone that had just the one thing, and it turned out to be a massive load of things behind it because, of course, you can never guarantee what is on somebody's mobile phone. And if you just see one thing, there might well be a load of other things behind it that we can get involved in. So please, if you do ever question yourself, then it's important that you share it. But of course, it's not only the investigation of criminals that the Internet Child Abuse team gets involved with. We're seeing a large phenomena of self-produced or first-person produced images by young people and children themselves going onto the internet. And of course, the sextortion that we talked about in the beginning. ICAT also goes and deals with a number of young people and children who get themselves involved in trouble online, and for which we receive safeguarding referrals. The way that we deal with that usually is by going out and educating the children, talking with the parents, making people aware who can make proactive safeguarding decisions for their children. And of course, this kind of a problem, we have seen sextortion and things like that lead to sort of like suicides and real mental health issues for children. So getting in there as quickly as possible is important to us to really tackle that problem and that growing issue, and allowing parents to be fully aware and in the knowledge of what their child is up to from the referrals that we get from our partner organizations is it's key in helping and preventing that. Yeah, and the reason why I include a lot of these different websites here is because sexploitation and self-generated images, it's very easy for children to get involved in these things these days with parents who perhaps aren't as educated or as aware about the online world. And it all starts with places like Instagram and OnlyFans, and we're seeing a big uptick in perhaps young females who are generating images of themselves for perhaps commercial gain, or being commercially exploited because of the things and the news articles that they read on websites like OnlyFans, or seeing other perhaps Instagram models and things like that, and trying to perhaps model that in themselves in some way. And you only really have to type into Google online the phrase "leaves jobs for OnlyFans," and you will see tons and tons of people who leave regular jobs, even police officers who've left their regular jobs, and the news media has blasted it all over there saying, oh, left jobs and now makes 10K a week on OnlyFans. And of course, as we talked about earlier, that's a really big enticing thing for younger people who think that they can make this astronomical quantity of money by posting images of themselves online, and perhaps then leaving themselves really vulnerable to being exploited by people who are out there looking to cause them harm. And we talked about the sexual exploitation thing in the beginning there as well. So someone stole my thunder, but that's potentially what it can lead up to. And we're seeing a really big rise in referrals to ICAT from young men who are being victims of sextortion online. Adolescents, of course, growing up with access to the internet and access to a growing supply of pornography online, are quite often led by images of pretty young girls used by people who are looking to exploit them, in order that they will upload images of themselves so that they can then be blackmailed. And we see a lot of that with predominantly young men who fall victim to that, and we have to go out and educate them as well. It's a sad situation that there's not a great deal that we can do as a police organisation after the fact to deal with those offenders, being that most of them are based outside of the UK, but we'll still come around and provide support and advice and conduct that intervention there, because of course, if we left that with no kind of interaction with the child at all, it's very distressing, and that kid's going to be dealing with it all by themselves. Yes, and of course, it's odd to say that sort of like pornography can sort of like be sort of like a passion project for you, but the psychology behind pornography, as we talked about in the PPod podcast, Steve, when we were doing that, is very interesting. Young people are being exposed to this kind of thing at an earlier and earlier age, and really, it's not just hardcore pornography. It's just opening up your Instagram and clicking on the search button. Kids these days are bombarded by images of models and people on beaches and bikinis and things like that, and it's all having a really big impact on how they develop and their understanding of relationships and what's right and wrong to put on the internet, and leads them into some really vulnerable situations. So the psychology behind that is something that I'm really interested in looking at and looking into. And you could probably talk about it all day, but it seems a little bit outside the scope of what we would deal with. Um, yeah, but if you're ever concerned about a young person, their activities online, or something that you've seen perhaps, and you're not quite sure, or perhaps that young person's not quite ready to talk about it with a police officer or anyone official just yet, well, then we have Stop It Now. And this was established by the Lucy Faithfull Foundation, and they are a very independent, non-judgmental organization that anyone can call to talk about concerns about what either they are looking at online, or perhaps what they have seen other people looking at online, or what children are doing online. They're the only organization that I know of so far, but I'm sure that there are others popping up all the time who will talk to people about, who will talk to offenders about what they've been looking at online, and provide some courses and frameworks for them to follow so that they can seek help for that. But they also do talk to people who have family members who have been found looking at indecent images, or have concerns about their partners, about what they're looking at online, things like that. Completely independent. We refer everyone to them. They're fantastic people. And yeah, if you ever have a question yourself, don't quite think it's reaching out to the police just yet territory, pick up the phone and give these people a call. They'll be happy to talk to you about it. And they'll be happy to talk to anybody who is perhaps a child and a bit worried about their online habits. And if you think that anyone's at risk, maybe give them a call and discuss it with them. Absolutely. So yeah, I just wanted to talk briefly about the risk factors for children online as well. I'm sure you're all perfectly aware, but any kind of ACEs that happen in people, adverse childhood experiences that happen, or traumatic experiences in children's lives, can leave them quite vulnerable to exploitation by people online, and quite vulnerable to perhaps putting themselves in situations online which leave them vulnerable to exploitation. Things such as a recent grief or loss, family disruption. We see a lot of children who are sort of, the parents are divorced, there's been domestic abuse scenarios and things. They've perhaps spent some time in the care system as well, and that leaves them sort of like in what Stop It Now would call a risk factor for engaging in perhaps bad, poor behavior online, or putting themselves at risk online. Lack of permanent dependable housing, of course, that would lead to sort of like economic exploitation for this kind of imagery and that kind of grooming behavior from adults online. Yeah, the development, obviously there's some obvious ones that I think that everyone's going to be really aware of, but sort of like we know about traumatic history, we know about the challenges that perhaps people who are physically vulnerable, intellectually or developmentally vulnerable online will experience when they don't quite have the same understanding of perhaps what a normal relationship is, and now people are engaging them across apps like Snapchat or Instagram. Yeah, and all of this is quite relevant as well. If they don't have that kind of peer connection, if they have no one to talk to about, their sexuality, what they're experiencing, that leaves them quite vulnerable online, especially people who are looking, who are perhaps questioning their sexual identity, because of course it allows people to build up that trust with them online and build that rapport with them online. And if that's a stranger on the internet, leads you into a bit of a dark area sometimes, and that's something that we've seen online as well. Yeah, I would say absolutely when I'm dealing with adult offenders, the number of people that we get in the cells and who are, looking at online indecent images of children, who are looking at, who are trying to talk with children online, or perhaps engaging in grooming behavior, certainly early exposure to pornographic images in their sort of early teens or as they're growing up is a common theme. And if you notice anybody who has or self-admits to significant pornography usage, online pornography usage, this is also a common theme that we're seeing in our people that we speak to, people that end up looking at the illegal images online and have moved into that realm of illegal pornography online. quite often tell us that they are self-confessed pornography addicts, quite often tell us that they were exposed to this kind of material at a very young age, and that they have, they will look at it for hours and hours a day. And if you're noticing, perhaps if you're seeing somebody who spends a lot of time online, like James was talking about, in front of their computer all day, you've got your teenager, they're upstairs, they're safe, they're up there 5 hours a day. What are they looking at? It's it's a dark path, and you only have to work in my industry for a number of years before you become staunchly anti-porn, essentially. Um, yeah, so just some further reading on the subject. Don't worry, I've only got a few slides left, but like this is a fantastic book if anybody's interested in the subject side of things about pornography and its long-term effects on the psychology of people, and how they interact in relationships, and how it affects perhaps your the psychology of you, basically, in your brain. Um, we are seeing, and these studies are coming out now that say that people who are using pornography from a very young age and looking at it for a very long time, and perhaps describing themselves as pornography addicts, are experiencing the same kind of brain chemistry changes, and it has the same effects on the brain as hardcore drug users, in that they need more and more extreme material to get the same high, to get the same sense of satisfaction. And we're seeing a lot of people, as I said previously, who appear to be looking at indecent imagery and illegal pornography, the extreme pornography, who say that it didn't just start out. You don't just one day go from being normal user to looking at child pornography, that it is a slow descent from legal to illegal porn. And this is a great resource if you're interested in the area, and you're interested in perhaps how society has changed massively since the advent of high-speed online pornography. Then this is a great book to read, and it's also a great podcast as well, where new studies are coming out every day. Just for an example, a 2019 study of behavioral addiction showed that 11% of men and 3% of women reported some level of agreement with the statement that I am addicted to pornography. In 2024, those numbers have jumped up to about 63% in some men in some studies. So we're seeing a massive change in how our society is dealing with high-speed online pornography and the effects on us. And if you are somebody who happens to deal with children and you can get them to open up with you about their online usage and perhaps what they're doing online, definitely ask. It's definitely worth asking and reporting a concern if they are looking at this kind of material for extended periods of time, or if you know anybody who looks at this kind of material for an extended period of time. Yeah, it's great subject area, and we could talk about it all day, but I'm conscious of time, and I don't want to keep you here any longer than perhaps what I should do. Just the final note is that if you're ever concerned about sharing information with children, with CEOPS, with us, with any of the safeguarding practitioners, then the working together to safeguard children document, as I'm sure you probably all know, gives you that protection. Never be concerned about sharing information where you think a child is at risk, and if you're in doubt, just ask. There is no barrier to agencies sharing information with the police where they think a child is at risk in 99% of cases, I'm sure. But yes, that's it from me, and thank you very much. And I'll hand over to Steve if you have any questions or concerns or things like that. You're welcome to get in touch with us at Avon and Somerset Police or with CEOPS. And if you want to make a report, that button is there on the website.